Alrighty. Thanks everyone for joining us. Welcome to our webinar today, CX meets UX, Designing for a Better Customer Service and Agent Experience. My name is Tracy and I'm here from Talkdesk Product Marketing Team. Today we are fortunate to have with us Ellen Beldner of StitchFix Product Design Team, Ryan Donahue, VP of Global Design at Zendesk, and our own Gadi Shmia, COO of Talkdesk. All right, so before we begin, I'd like to go over a few of our housekeeping items. Number one, we have our audience on mute, and you can ask questions or post comments at any time on our discussion board. Number two, the webinar will be recorded, and we will send it out to all registrants right after the webinar. And number three, finally, we'll have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so feel free to submit any questions you have during the presentation, and we're going to try our best to get to all of them. All right, so without further ado, let's get started.
Hello and good afternoon for everyone. This is Gadi Shmia. I'm COO with Talkdesk, and I'm going to have the smallest portion of this webinar. We want to make sure we leave as much time as possible for both Ryan and Ellen to share with you their thoughts about the connection between CX and UX. So what I want to do is go through a few slides, just talk about overall trends, and maybe provide a quick introduction to Talkdesk, and then we'll hand it over to Ellen, followed by Ryan, and you're going to meet me again for the Q&A. So, a couple of trends I would like to cover real quick before we get into our presentation. The first is that we are in a time of major shift, and I will share a few slides around this. We moved from a phone-centric customer service in the 80s and 90s to an email-centric customer service 10, 15 years ago. And I think we see more and more customers interested in real-time customer service now, and this trend is I think is driven a lot by the fact that a lot of the services we consume today, think of Uber, think of DoorDash, are delivered and provided real-time. So as consumers, we got used to expect customer service to also be delivered in real-time. And real-time includes emails, obviously, but we see customers, both customers and brands, showing more interest in real-time channels like voice, like SMS, and like video. The other change we see is the position of the customer service department. It used to be a call center for most companies, and the focus was how can we get as few customer calls as possible, how can we make them as short as possible, words like first-time resolution or terms like first-time resolution or time to resolution were really important ones. And now we see customers are really focused and brands are really focused on customer service. And for them, it's okay to speak with a customer for 15 minutes. If this customer lifetime value is $20,000, $30,000, the investment is totally worth it, and they start looking at customer service as part of their brand. So major shift in the last few years alone. This is an interesting point I shared with several people, with a team internally. The question a lot of people ask is, would self-service kill the phone? And Talkdesk obviously is focused on providing customer service via phone SMS. And we are asked this question a lot. And if you think about the world in the last 20 years, and if you look at this little chart here on the left, in 1995, we had no self-service. The world had no self-service. The only form of self-service available was mailing catalogs. Open the catalog, you look at the catalog, and you choose a few items, you mail it back, and you get an item a few weeks delivered to your door. If you think of the world post-internet and then post-mobile, the level of self-service today went through the roof. We had nothing in 95. Now there's almost nothing we cannot do with our apps and with our on the web. We can book tickets, we can change tickets, we can change seats on an airplane, we can order food, we can order a car. So almost everything we can imagine can be done now by clicking on a few buttons. So self-service, which is a blue column, went up significantly. We would have expected that the volume of calls to customer service centers will decrease dramatically, as you see with the orange chart. But the reality is that the volume of calls stayed pretty constant. People call customer service almost as much as they used to call, even more than they used to call 20 years ago. And the reasons are, brands are pushing customers toward the phone because they can get real-time connection with a customer and resolve issues in a much faster time versus the email back and forth. And the other reason is business has become much more complex. So when we work with companies offer us so many more options that even though we can do almost everything using self-service, now there's always more things that we are able to do only through customer service. So despite the amount of self-service, despite all the new channels available now, we definitely see call volume increase and more companies focus on voice as one of their key channels for customer service. Maybe the last chart, and I think Ryan is going to touch upon it a little bit in his presentation as well, is how strategic companies are seeing customer service today. This chart, and sorry we missed the year mark here. This survey checked how strategic companies see their call centers 5 years ago and today. And 5 years ago, the same pool of companies were pooled, and the number was 53%. When they're asked about how strategic they see, or do they see their call center as a strategic differentiator, today the number was 83%. So 83% of the companies surveyed look at their call center as a strategic differentiator. And why is that? A lot of the services we use today are commoditized. When you look at food delivery, you can choose, in San Francisco, you can choose between 5 or 15 different companies that will deliver food directly to you. How do you differentiate between them? Customer service. When you look at e-commerce, what's the difference between buying a bag on Amazon and buying a bag through ebag.com? Customer service. So for most companies now, because the services are so commoditized, customer service became a true differentiator. And we see customer service has become more and more strategic and have a seat around the leadership team as it never had before. So this was kind of my pre-talk to the real talk. Just want to take a moment to introduce you to TalkDesk. For the few of you who don't know us, TalkDesk has been around for 5 years. We are one of the first and only cloud-only or born in the cloud call center companies. Several things to know about us. We have all these great customers. So TalkDesk has 1,200 customers, among them great brands like Box and Dropbox and the Weather Company, which is now part of IBM, Pete's Coffee and Tea, and hundreds of others. We have hundreds of shared customers with Zendesk. So the second thing to know about TalkDesk is that we integrate well with most CRM systems. Main one of them, of course, is Zendesk, Salesforce, and several others. But part of TalkDesk DNA is very open integration framework to your CRM. We don't want to see ourselves as the hub of all information. So we work really nicely with your CRM, sending tickets there, creating tickets from there, working back and forth. So no information is locked in TalkDesk, and at the same time, all the information from your CRM system is available to the agent when they take the call. So, not trying to make this a TalkDesk commercial, just a little bit about us. Maybe the last thing I always like to talk about is that we are a true technology company. About 50% of our resources are invested in R&D, and we keep innovating in a very fast pace. So if you've seen TalkDesk a year ago, come and see a demo again today. You see some massive differences between last year even and today. And my last slide before I hand over to Ellen is a plug for OpenTalk. So we're having our second customer conference, OpenTalk 2017, in 4.5 weeks in San Francisco. If you enjoyed this presentation, this is a little primer. We're going to have actually similar topics also covered during OpenTalk. So you're invited to go to talkdesk.com/OpenTalk and check the agenda and the speakers. We also have a 50% discount code for you, and I'm going to remind you this again at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our first speaker, Ellen Beldner. She's the head of product design at StitchFix. StitchFix is also a TalkDesk and a Zendesk customer. And Ellen is here to speak about CX meet UX and design sprints at StitchFix.
Cool, thank you, Gadi. Hi, everyone. So, as Gadi said, my name is Ellen Beldner. I'm the head of product design and UX at StitchFix. As Gadi also mentioned, we are Zendesk and TalkDesk customers. I have to say, Ryan, I actually have a huge amount of respect for Zendesk and the difficulty you guys have in creating such a robust platform. I admire a lot of the design decisions that Zendesk has made, and we actually do a lot of work in how do we integrate properly with Zendesk to support our agents better. So that's actually like a key sort of strategic thing that we think about. So awesome work.
Thank you.
I'm sure you guys get a lot of complaints, but
I would compliment you on your fashion sense, but unfortunately, I think the product for men is new, right? I haven't tried Stitch Fix for men yet, so I'm sure it's awesome. I would wear your clothes.
Cool.
Yeah. By the way, I'll stand up. Nobody sees me here. Stitch Fix pants.
Oh, nice.
I'm sure you can get a referral code.
Okay, excellent. I will do that.
I'll hook you up.
So yeah, as I'm StitchFix is an online personal styling service for women and men. As Ryan said, our men's business launched last fall, and our women's business offers petite, standard size, plus size, and maternity clothing. Customers sign up, a personal stylist picks a box of clothes and sends them to you. You try them on at home, and then you send back anything you don't want, and you buy whatever you want to keep. So my own background is in human-computer interaction. I've worked at primarily tech companies. I like to say that StitchFix is the first company I've worked at where our product has not been technology. I've worked at Google, LinkedIn, Groupon, and several startups as a individual contributor and as a lead. And I've also led and worked on a huge range of both consumer-facing and what we call expert use software products. So for example, systems for CX agents are all expert use. They're used by people, 8 to 10 hours a day, and they do very complex things with them. So at Stitch Fix, our UX group is responsible for the user experience of our client-facing software. So this is the website and app that a new client would sign up and use, and for the software that drives our businesses and that are used by internal employees. So this includes our styling platform, our warehouse software, we rolled our own, our merchandising software, and our customer service platform. And we have dedicated engineering teams for each of those pieces of software. So I'm going to talk to you today about how we are using design thinking at Stitch Fix, and specifically Google Design Sprints or Google Ventures Design Sprints to improve our customer service offering. And first talking a little bit about how we think of the product development lifecycle and how we have worked design sprints into our process. And I think Ryan is going to talk a little bit more generally about design thinking and how they use that at Zendesk. So when we talk about the product development lifecycle at Stitch Fix, this is kind of how we think about it. There's three key phases. One of them is what problems are we trying to solve? That's primarily a business concern. So that's thinking about what are new markets we want to go after. As we moved into the men's launch or our recent plus size launch, we have a strategy team and our marketing team. They do a lot of the business development there. So then they come to us, and it's our job within product engineering primarily to figure out what are we building. Like, what are the things that we need to do to achieve those goals? And then finally, the third phase is building it from an engineering perspective. So that's when we're really executing on building sustainable systems. So this middle part, this what are we building, is kind of the product definition phase. And that's when UX teams really come into their own. That's when a great UX process is really, really helpful. So you say, okay, here's our problem. Maybe we're launching Plus, or we are launching new CX tools. What are the possible things? Or, we need to improve our CX tools to support live real-time phone support. So, okay, what are the things we need to do? Like, here are some ideas that we could solve them. Let's prototype them. And then we come out of that process with, something like a PRD that's everyone has bought into. And so engineering can say, like, all right, yeah, we agree, this is the right thing to build. UX says, yeah, this is usable. It's going to improve, the lives of people using it. And the business team says, yes, this is going to meet our goals. Design sprints they're kind of trendy right now. Google Ventures published this book, Sprint, I think last year and a half. And it's a process that really encapsulates the essence of design thinking into a week. So we were pretty skeptical about them. Everyone says, oh, you're taking 7 people, you're locking them in a room for a week. They're not doing any, they're doing fluffy things with Post-it notes. But we actually found them. We did our pilot design sprint with our CX team, our customer service team last summer, and we found that it was a very effective process for helping us define what we think we want to build in a pretty short amount of time. So the essence of a design sprint, as it's presented in the book, is up to 7 key team members. They're in a room for 5 days. During that time, everyone gets on the same page. You explore, you ideate, you explore, and then you validate the ideas that you come up with. A big part of the process is a phase of concrete sketching and prototyping. So you're not just brainstorming and throwing ideas up on the wall, you're actually articulating those ideas in a way that is concrete enough that someone can look at them and say, oh, that's about 6 months of work, or that might take us, that's an extra small project. And then when you validate those through a prototype and maybe a user test at the end of the week, you can help answer big business questions because you're getting actual customer feedback on the prototype that you've built by the end of the week. So you can say like, all right, we built this thing, we tested it, and it actually did not work at all. So we're not going to spend the next 3 months of our roadmap time building out this idea, and we need to sort of go back to the drawing board. So one of the reasons that we started using the design sprint process, and the reason that design thinking works in general, is that traditional brainstorming isn't a great method for generating innovative ideas. You have issues around people anchoring on a single couple of ideas. You have issues around groupthink. So the group will tend to go off in a single direction and they'll over-index on one particular space. Anxiety is a big thing. Some people are, a little hesitant to speak up. Traditional brainstorming is also really good for extroverts and really bad for introverts. And I can pretty much guarantee you that everyone on your engineering and design teams is like 75% introvert. It's just like how the industry goes. You're not going to get the best work out of your designers and engineers if you put them in a room and ask them to talk about a problem. And then, the other thing about creative processes is that they are, they kind of happen at random. And for many people who are in engineering and design, the most creative parts of that process is when they're actually working through a problem. So the reason that design sprints are useful in design thinking in general, and specifically design sprints, is that a lot of ideas in traditional brainstorming are very vague. People are like, we've done traditional brainstorms at StitchFix, for example, where someone says, oh, our algorithm should be better at style. And we're like, well, yeah, it should. That's a really great thing. And we have a team of like 20 data scientists who are working exactly on that. And it's a very vague idea. But in something like a sprint or in design thinking, you can actually articulate, hey, we want to try this new algorithm for capturing style, and like here's a prototype of how that might work, and we're going to validate the results of that. And then the final thing I wanted to call out as well is that a lack of ideas usually isn't the problem within a company. Like when you're working at a company full time, the folks working there, your people have great ideas. Everyone they have their pet ideas. People have their thing. Oh, if only we could do this, we could make things so much better. So the problem usually isn't having ideas in the first place. The problem, at least at Stitch Fix, as we've found it, and I've seen throughout my career, is how do you articulate those ideas and scope them in a way that allows the company to put them on a roadmap and validate them? So again, it's not lack of ideas. It's like, what do you do with the ideas that you have? The outcome of a sprint, and I think these are kind of the important things that we've learned about sprints and why they work. The first thing is the team. You're gathering a group of people who represent, it depends on the project you're working on, but you're getting key stakeholders in the room. You're getting representatives from your engineering team, from your data science team, from your marketing team. And in a CX world, for example, in the CX sprints that we did, we had one of the leaders of our CX organization. We had 2 designers in the room, and we had 2 of our engineers. And so the mix of ideas that we got there was sort of tech, business, and design. And that created a really great environment for this collaborative ideation, where each of those, that diversity of perspective helps bring new ideas to the table, and it helps people work really quickly. So the next step is the shared reality. And the reason that is important is because people come to the table with different prior knowledge. And so at the sprint, the first thing you do is shared reality. And then the next couple of things are concrete ideas. So you're articulating ideas fully. And then finally, you're scoping and getting to an MVP. So the outcome of a sprint is really something like a PRD. This is a better way to create a PRD than locking a product manager in a room for a week, because it's collaborative and you're getting that diversity of perspective and the actual validation that you do from user testing to create this plan of like, okay, here's what we think we want to do. We talked about a bunch of ideas and this is our output. At Stitch Fix, for example, we talk about the output of a sprint. It's not like, oh, we did this prototype and now we're going to literally build the thing. The output of the sprint is a plan for what we are going to engineer into an A/B test. So our first sprint was in Pittsburgh last summer, as I said. We had a really gnarly problem. Our customer service team wanted to let our clients extend the return window. So Stitch Fix asked our clients to send back the returns 3 days after receiving a package. And this is, just in case you're wondering, this is as convenient as we can make it. It's a prepaid envelope. You can drop it in any mailbox. And some clients need a little more time, and this is part of great customer experience. We're a highly personalized service, and we want to make sure that we can do whatever we need for our clients. And so we're happy to give that, but the requests to extend the return window were a major ticket driver for CX. They are also a class of tickets, since we pretty much do it for every client who requests it. It was a very automated process, and it didn't really require these great agents to be thinking really deeply about the problem. So we wanted to automate that process. The problem is it wasn't a simple problem to solve, because this whole automation and return window ties into our financial systems and what we call our truancy processing. So of course, we always have some small segment of clients who their credit card goes offline and they have merchandise, or we don't hear from them. So solving this problem was actually much, much deeper and more gnarly than it looked. It also was very scary for the business to approach, because suddenly, if we allow clients to extend the return window, they may start keeping merchandise for a much longer time frame, and then that impacts our inventory utilization and causes a shift in the entire business model, which makes a lot of people very unhappy if that happens in an uncontrolled way. So tackling this problem, even though it seemed very small from a CX perspective, was actually a really, really massive problem for the entire organization. And we used a design sprint to kind of frame the problem. So we got to Pittsburgh, we brainstormed solutions, and at the end of the week, we had a prototype for how customers might experience it. And we were able, through that process, to articulate, here's what it would take to get this done, and here's how we plan to test it live on site. And it worked out very, very well for the organization. It was a great way to, in only a week of work, to be able to articulate, here is this plan for this massive project in a way that we could explain to senior executives. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's why we're going to do it. Here's what we're going to do. And here's how we're going to measure it. So again, coming back, got the team together, shared reality, came up with a concrete idea, a prototype that we tested by the end of the week. And out of that, we drew up basically a PRD. We did another one last December, and I will say, the sprint process is not a panacea like everything. We did a second one for our CX team. Since then, by the way, we've done about 8 of these. But the second one we did for our CX team was last December. And that one didn't go as well. It got a little bit big. We had 14 people in the room, and we ended up sort of splitting into 3 separate subgroups. And the outcome of that was less coherent. And I think we also didn't do as good of a job following through with the PRD that was an output of that process. So I think with the basic summary I would say is the sprint process is a really, really effective way to make substantial progress on big, gnarly problems. The stuff that makes that work is that you are getting to a concrete proposal by the end of the week that you're validating with user testing or some other evaluation method. And you have to follow through on it and ensure that that knowledge and that plan gets into a more fully articulated PRD that then you can continue to share outside the organization.
So thank you, Ellen. I would like to invite a second guest for this webinar, Ryan Donahoe from Zendesk. So as I said, Zendesk is a long partner of Talkdesk. We actually launched Talkdesk on stage together with Zendesk five years ago, and we have over 300 mutual customers with Zendesk, using Zendesk for ticketing and ticketing management, and using Talkdesk for the voice component. So I would like Ryan to join us and share his views about design, customer service, and how they meet.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. So hi, everyone. I'm Ryan. I run the creative department at Zendesk. We're a team of around 50 people globally. That sort of spans product designers, focused on a lot of the types of problems, well, not the same problems, but the types of methodologies that Ellen is using at StitchFix with design thinking and that sort of thing. And we also have a very large brand department that focuses on sort of developing the Zendesk personality and how it sort of expresses itself in the real world. So I've been sort of fortunate enough to have kind of a unique perspective on some of the trends that are starting to take place within the customer service world and the customer experience world and sort of the design world in general. Being at Zendesk, we have a ton of customers who are all sort of tackling these problems every day in their own way. And we're fortunate enough to be able to step back and look at some of the trends across this large cohort of people and businesses and sort of how they're solving problems. And my talk today is really about what I believe is beginning to happen, which is an emergence of this new type of partnership between design organizations and customer service organizations, which I think typically are very distant types of colleagues within an organization. And I think I'm hoping to sort of convince you that there's a good reason that's beginning to change. And it can be very profitable for you to change the way you think about these two things. So this is kind of a very sort of eye-opening statistic from Gartner that almost 90% of companies are planning to compete mainly on the basis of customer experience over the next few years. And that's sort of really, that number has really gone up significantly over the last couple of years. And going back to Gadi's slide at the beginning of the talk about commoditization and how it's becoming harder for businesses to compete on technology alone, I very much agree with that. And there's just, I think, this transformation that's beginning to take place within the customer service industry to really figure out like what are the true like untapped values of this organization, and what are the tools that they need to really sort of unleash their value as something much more than reactive sort of problem solvers or ticket closers, but really as people that are essentially a mouthpiece of your brand. Like I think of customer service as really the first layer of a brand experience for most digital businesses. Of course, if you're talking about an offline business, you're walking into a storefront and you're smelling the perfume in the air in the boutique. You're looking at the salespeople. You're feeling the fabric on the rack. All those types of things help you form a very distinctive opinion about a brand experience. But if you're more and more, these brand relationships that we're having are online only, and so you're forming all those opinions based on a web experience, an online experience, until a problem happens, and then you're picking up the phone. A lot of people, as Guy said, are still picking up the phone to sort of reach out and sort of solve their problem. And that voice on the other end of the line, and the way that they talk, and the way that they their personality embodies your expectations of the brand, I think is really an important layer of a brand experience. But a lot of support organizations don't really see themselves that way. So, why is all this technology commoditization happening? Well, there's just been this sort of unprecedented amount of ease which has been delivered to us in terms of starting a company, building a website, sending an email campaign. The cost of storage is just sort of massively cheaper than it's ever been. And so there's never been such a low barrier to entry to build a really great piece of software, a really great digital experience. So, everyone has the same sort of, it's a very level playing field for the most part. And so brands are becoming more and more challenged to compete on the basis of technology. So people are starting to look at these other ways of really differentiating their brand, and customer experience and customer service and design are all a really big part of that. So I probably should have used StitchFix here as an example of amazing customer experience and innovation.
I forgive you.
But sorry, I had some stuff going on yesterday afternoon. But this is sort of, forget about Zappos. They're old news. But really, it's a great example that most people are familiar with, Zappos, and how they got so much publicity early on for really looking at customer service as this primary differentiator. Like, how are you going to compete selling shoes when Amazon sells shoes? Well, we're going to just deliver a totally different customer experience around service. And so it's the kind of softer layer of innovation that I think is actually quite accessible to people. You have to make sure you're doing it the right way, or you could spend a ton of money. And there's a smart way and sort of a not so smart way of unleashing the power of customer service. So you have to be efficient with it. But it can be a very quick way, I think, which you can innovate. So design and support today, though, are largely disconnected. It's very sad. The designers sit in one building usually, and the support people are over in some call center somewhere, another part of the building, or maybe in another country entirely. But they really have to come together for brands to compete on customer experience. So I'm going to tell you really briefly about why designers need support people. So designers need to get love from the support team, because if you're going to ask a support team to sort of like embody this brand that you've envisioned as like a creative director or a brand manager, you need trust from the support people. They need to really buy into this vision, or they're not going to want to wear the shirt that you're asking them to wear. They're not going to want to answer the phone using the scripts that you've written. I mean, all these types of brand instruments, from sort of visual ones to more subtle ones, they really can be designed by a design department, a group of people within your team that's really focused on creating a brand experience. But in order for it to be implemented and to be real, you have to have that awesome relationship and trust with support. So we need you to trust us. There is so much, there's a huge, I forget the size of this industry. It's something like a $10 billion industry, in the US alone, but just sort of paid research, like getting people that I think these are almost like, I call them like fake customers. It's like they're proxies for who your real customers are. You're going to pay like a market research organization to go out and tell you what they think about your products and services. It's just silly, it's so much better to work as a designer, to just talk to the customer service people who have those direct customer relationships and figure out some way of plugging yourself into that conversation so that you can learn from the real customers, not these kind of costly customer proxies. And of course, you guys have all the data. The customer support people on this call, you are swimming in customer data. And designers struggle to get it. They spend a lot of their day, especially organizations like Ellen's at StitchFix, who want to be user-centered, who want to put the customer first. The sort of the back office tasks of just lining up customer conversations, getting access to customer data, it takes, the hardest part is that, I would say. It's not doing the research and doing the design sprints. It's just sort of getting the data and getting the customer in front of you. And you guys are sort of living in that world, those of you who are our customer service executives and whatnot. So we need that. We need to sort of get that data from you. And I'm going to tell you briefly why support professionals need designers. So, traditionally, I think I think every day it's becoming a little bit more laughable to just sort of look at customer service organizations as these sort of outdated cost center types of groups. But traditionally, that has very much been the sort of unfortunate characterization of support organizations. They're purely a cost center, something that needs to be controlled and minimized as a sort of cost of doing business. But by aligning a support organization with design and starting to be that attendee at the design sprint, and by investing in really building a relationship with people like Ellen and bringing your group, a support group, close to the design group, I think it's really possible to position yourselves more as an innovation center within the company, because you start to be perceived as a group that's helping kind of facilitate information and know-how to people who are like designing products and defining R&D and all these really important things for an organization. So I think that probably has gone, I mean, that goes on unofficially. Like I think in most businesses, like people are talking to support, trying to get information, see what they can learn from support. But I think making it more of a formal relationship, putting the two teams physically closer together if you can, building that executive relationship between head of design, head of support, all that is really, really valuable in terms of the optics of your support team within a large company. So we have to do this. If we're going to innovate on customer experience, these teams have to come together. So I'm going to give you a couple quick tips on how to do that. So one of the things we do at Zendesk, which is kind of cool, is we actually make our designers provide customer service to our customers for the first few days on the job. So they go down and they close tickets and talk to people on our chat products, and they basically provide customer service, and they learn about how people are really using our products, and they learn about the customers. We also, as Ellen does, she loves to include a support organization within her design sprints. We do the same thing. The customer service folks in our team are invaluable in terms of what they contribute to a design thinking session. And they just bring like a completely unique point of view. And usually in my experience, it's not the designers, people that have that job title that are coming up with the most interesting ideas in a design sprint. It's other people that you bring along who are kind of coming at the problem from a different perspective. Tagging your data, it's so important, right? So there's so much amazing, there's this fire hose of data, whether it's voice data or email data in an email or a ticket, whatnot. Learning how to tag that, investing in the time it takes to tag data so that you can step back and look at the trends that you're seeing across all these different customer service interactions, and using that as a really important source of design sort of wayfinding. It's a really it's not easy. Tagging data properly is, I know it's a lot of work, but it's super valuable, and I think it's a good opportunity for partnership where you're kind of a design person is sitting with a support person, and they're kind of looking at the problem together, figuring out what that taxonomy of sort of tags should look like to sort of serve the needs of both teams. And then lastly, really thinking about your support experience as this critical layer of your brand, and investing in it like it's any other touch point for your brand. I mean, we don't hesitate to spend top dollar on printed materials, on our kiosk at like an event, some other type of brand touch point, but we don't invest the same amount of brand love into really sort of tuning a support experience into something that could really be not only efficient, but maybe memorable and unique in some way. So really looking at that as a brand opportunity, I think, is huge. So those are just some quick tips for how to get started. If you can, I just love this photo. This is actually a monarch butterfly. So there's a group that puts these tiny, they send out stickers. Anyone can request them. I think they're free, and they'll mail you these tiny stickers. And then you can actually buy your butterfly net and learn how to tag butterflies, so that then other people who find them later down the road can enter these tracking codes into their computers and track the flight of butterflies. So this is sort of an extreme example of how hard it can be to tag data. I think, it makes our job look easy compared to sort of catching a butterfly and tagging it yourself. So let's do it. It's time to do this. Everyone's going to be competing in the future on customer experience. So these two teams have to come together, sort of start thinking of themselves as one team instead of two separate teams. And by getting together, everyone's going to benefit. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions people might have.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ryan. We're going to open it up for questions in a minute or two. A couple of points to summarize and maybe bring all this presentation together. Both Ryan and Ellen talked about customer experience and how memorable customer experience is, and how important it is to the overall branding of a company. We are fortunate, both Talkdesk and Zendesk, to have really the best customers that care a lot about customer experience and customer service. And I want to tell you 3 stories that I told 100 times each, and I'll tell you how powerful it is to actually just get great customer service. DoorDash, a Talkdesk customer, first time I ordered, I got pierogies with pork instead of vegetarian ones. I called them. I was answering 1 minute, and they told me they were going to credit my order. I could either throw it away or just eat the pork. First time. Do you think I will ever buy again from DoorDash if they haven't fixed the issue right away? Of course not, but they did, and I became a long-time DoorDash customer, and I order from them on a regular basis. I got a Ring doorbell. I didn't know how to install it. I called. I was answered immediately. In 20 minutes, the doorbell was installed. I'm using Ring for almost 2 years now. I have amazing videos of weird people knocking on my door, and I'm a huge advocate of this brand. And lastly, StitchFix. My pants got bigger for some reason. I got slimmer. Whatever the thing is, I call them and say, hey, just feedback. I don't want anything. I just want you to know this pants I bought a few months ago now are really big on me. I don't think I lost weight. You know what they've done? They mailed me new pants back in a size smaller. When you think about this, why would I ever buy clothes from anyone else where nobody else is going to do it for me? And even if they do have to go to the store, bring the pants, argue with someone, customer service is what drives us to stay loyal customers, especially when there's so much choice. And these 3 stories, I kid you not, were told 100 times between them. So every customer you touch in this way and you make really happy becomes an advocate. And I want you to think about it not only when you run your teams, but also when you talk with your management, because these stories, this anecdote, are actually what makes a difference. The second point I want to make is how the discussion about customer service is changing. So I was sitting in exactly the same room at about the same time was one of our customers, one of the leading hotel reservation services, lead by customer service. And the entire discussion was all about features or functions or pricing or anything like this. We talked about how do we improve the customer experience throughout the call. And we debated issues of why do the customer need to be on hold when they call the hotel to figure something out. Maybe we can disconnect the call and call back the customer when we have a resolution. This is actually CX. This is UX. This is user experience delivered by the customer service team. It's not customer service strategy. It's an overall user experience. When a customer calls this hotel reservation company, they will talk about how great they are, even if they haven't touched their app or haven't touched their product, just because this is part of user experience. We talked about how we get their mobile app integrated to their customer service. So all the customer information is transferred in real time to the agent. These are the type of things that customers are now interested in discussing, and they will improve your overall user experience so you can get better results out of your agent, and actually at the same time save time. When your customers are happier, more focused, the agent get all the data, you're also going to spend less time and you'll become more effective. Because nobody really wants to spend time on your IVR. Nobody really wants to spend time answering questions that you should have known already. So you can focus on the customer and focus on what you can do to improve their state of mind from being here to maybe 5 to be 7 or 8 or 9. You have a big win in your hand. And my last comment is, think of customer contacts today as positive only. If we thought about customer service as cost center when there's less option, less competition, when a customer reach out to you, it's an opportunity. It's not a cost. They want to engage. They want to remain your customer, and this is why they call you. So don't be the company that spends all this money on customer acquisition and then lose the customer on the customer service opportunity. The people that call you actually want to stay your customer. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother. Service them in a way that they will become brand advocates versus leaving to someone else because the choice is there. So with that, I would like to open up to questions. I would say that if you want to hear more from leaders in the industry, and we have great speakers in Open Talk, check up the page, the speaker page. Ellen's going to be there again. We're going to have speakers from Zendesk and from many of our customers. Just sign up. It's in San Francisco. You have a great discount code here, and I promise you're going to come out with at least as interesting content as you came out of this webinar. So with this, let's open it up to questions. Tracy, it's all yours.
Let's take a look at what questions we've got today. Let's see. Let's start out with a really easy one for Ellen. What is the most common problem that you run into during your design sprints?
Well, one of our first learnings, we were all in Pittsburgh. This maybe isn't the most common, but one of the first learnings, and this is a little bit tongue in cheek, was we learned don't everyone go out, for dinner and lots of drinks during the sprint, because you won't be really present. And I think that actually does speak to one of the key issues of a sprint, is like people being present and energetic. So one of the things about sprints is that people are not on their laptops the whole time. And that can be very hard for people, but it does mean that you are present and engaged and really in that experience. And so keeping your energy level up is actually one of the biggest challenges during a sprint.
Great. So we have another question here. Could the presenters please talk about how they integrate together with their systems for better client solutions? So for example, does StitchFix utilize any integrations between TalkDesk and Zendesk to better serve their clients?
So we are in in relatively early stages of our TalkDesk integration, and we haven't yet fully figured out what that is going to look like. But we do spend a lot of time. Actually, the design sprint that we did in December, the output of that really suggested a couple of things to us. One of them is that we want to keep the agents in Zendesk for as many tickets as they can solve there, because it's faster and more efficient. So we have kind of a two-pronged approach. For certain categories of tickets, we're working on fleshing out Zendesk sidebar elements to bring more client data into Zendesk. to provide agents with better context. And then, when there are more complex problems that the agents need to go into our own proprietary tools, then they go into those systems. So we leverage those integrations as much as possible. And this is actually where I speak about why Zendesk is actually a really wonderfully designed system. It's hard to say that, and I know everyone runs into their frustrations, but for Zendesk, having designed this amazing platform that allows so much customization is a very, very difficult challenge.
And one quick point about this before we move to the next question. We definitely see it across all our customers. Integration is almost the only way to work today. We truly believe that agents have one of the most difficult jobs. They have to navigate between a Zendesk UI, a TalkDesk UI, their sometimes internal systems UI, and solve issues in real time, especially when they're on the phone. There's no time to wait. You don't want to put the customer on a long hold. So they have a really hard job. So our job is not to create more UI elements into their life. Our job is to let them focus on a single UI. If it's Zendesk, it's Zendesk. If it's internal tool, the internal tool. So they can really focus on solving the customer issue. If we have as little as possible UI, we prefer it. So the way we design TalkDesk is everything we do can integrate into, in this case, Zendesk. We create, a call comes in, it's create a ticket in Zendesk. A call is being missed, it can create a ticket in Zendesk. Even voicemails can be tracked from Zendesk, so the agents don't have to spend a lot of time switching between systems, because every time you switch context, you actually lose time and lose focus. So for us, integration is key, and we truly believe that the best way to serve customers is have every single customer-facing system integrate to the other.
Great. So got another question here. This person thinks that there's not as much of an alignment between design and support, mainly because design teams don't usually want to listen to support teams since they don't get that high of a volume of tickets. So Ryan, for you, how can we make the support experience seem more important for the design team?
Well, it's a good question. I think that designers in part have kind of been trained, good designers have been trained to sort of not to overemphasize like a single data point, like in terms of making a big decision or trying to solve a design problem. So it's good to be a little critical of sort of the sample size of customers that are experiencing an issue if you get a ticket or something or a customer complaint. But that being said, I think that you need to, as a support person, if you're looking to sort of, you can't be responsible for everything. You can't be like going, oh, I'm gonna with my free time, I'm gonna find like every single ticket that supports this sort of problem we're seeing. It's too much work for you. What you need to do is you need to find that advocate on the design team that's curious about the customer, who's open, who seems like really into sort of that user-centered sort of design way. They're empathetic type of person that cares about the customer a lot, and just start that relationship with that one person and send them that single email, even though you don't have statistical basis for like changing the product overnight. Just sort of reach out and start the conversation with a single problem.
And I can add to that as well. Like when I think about how we get information from our customer service teams, we don't use that information to size the problem. Like we will marry the support tickets that we see from CX with other, with our Google Analytics and our other backend data, but then we use that information to really empathize with the customer. So we are able to use the CX data to understand how customers experience that problem. And it adds that color and that nuance and that empathy for us to effectively solve the problem. So it's less than like, oh, 10% of our tickets are about this thing. It's, yeah, 10% of our tickets are about this thing. And that represents, 5% of all of our checkouts or whatever it is. And that's a big problem. And here's why it's a problem.
I like that. It's almost like you use that single instance of the problem from a real customer as your anecdote and as your persona to sort of, if you can prove it with the data, you could still have like the surface of that problem should still be that one customer in their own language.
Totally, yeah.
So maybe a question for both of you guys. Someone asked, how do you measure performance and what metrics factor into that?
So I think this is a huge problem that people have. The design industry is for years now has been really talking about how to quantify like good design versus bad design. And we're still in the very, very early stages of being able to do this. I think that every design team struggles with, this is sort of the thought that would keep me up at night, which is like, am I using data enough to sort of drive good design? It's really, really hard to do. And so Zendesk, we haven't like solved this. We haven't really come up with a formula that allows us to sort of, without a doubt, like measure the impact of sort of our customer experience and how that translates into value. But the good news is that I don't think anyone else has either.
Yeah, I mean, I could say really quickly, it's a very deep question. StitchFix is a profoundly data-driven company, and we actually have more data scientists than engineers. We try to measure changes in design in the context of overall sort of product decisions. We do a lot of A/B testing, and we also use sort of earlier stage methodologies to assess what's the right thing to build and launch. So that's why we use usability testing and like other methodologies to get to the right thing to A/B test. And then we have very, very deep metrics. At StitchFix, we use things like the keep rate, the order value. Those are our top line business metrics. And then within a given project, we may do sort of funnel measurement to look at the success of individual design elements.
One quick point, based on what I hear from many of our customers, decide what's really important for your business and then measure that. And if CSAT is the only thing that you want to measure and you want to make sure you keep constant, just measure that. So we allow customers to measure customer satisfaction for every single call. The moment you establish a baseline, this can be something you use as a way to manage your team. So rather than saying, I need to have 50 agents, you can actually say, I need to keep my customer satisfaction at 90%. And if wait time increases, or if time to respond increases, or the level of service decreases, my CSAT number will drop and will be an indication, and almost a real-time indication, that I'm doing something wrong as a customer service organization. Some others measure real numbers like upsells. Many of the service teams actually can drive revenue through upsells, through customer engagement. If this is your mode, measure that. But I do recommend measuring one thing as really important for the business, because you can dive into a lot of measurement like SLA, time to response, time to close a ticket, how many tickets a day. All this data is great, but it's only supporting the main data, which is what you're trying to achieve. So focus on this. If it's customer satisfaction, keep this number, post it on a big board, and make sure if it drops, you do something immediately about that, because the rest of the numbers you measure may not tell you the full story.
Awesome. All right. Well, we've got 1 minute left until we're done. So that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank all of our presenters for taking time out of their days to talk with everyone. As a reminder, we're going to be sending out the recording of this webinar along with the slides very soon after. So please keep an eye on your inboxes. And with that, I think we are done. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and hope to see you at the next webinar.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.